This week on Ridiculously Bored. I took a shot to the so hard. I'm a big
Did
fan
you?
of anything that's shaped like a banana.
You have to clip that to put it in the beginning of an episode. Stupid face, your height, your Roy G. Biv that you talked about the other day, your tattoos, your stupid face.
Hello there. I'm David Michael,
I'm Michael Carter.
and we are
Ridiculously
Ridiculously Bored. Hello there, Michael. How's it going?
Good, David. Yourself?
Oh, fantastic. We are here for episode number 9.
Yes.
How was your week?
My week was quiet, for lack of another term. I mean, I was in D.C. looting and rioting Congress last week, but other than that, it's actually been a really quiet week.
Oh, you went there.
That's all I'm going to say on that. How was your week? Because your week involved your going to and coming from a nice long drive and kind of a vacation.
Yeah.
How was that?
We had a 13-hour drive with 2 dogs, which was interesting. We drove from Arizona to Colorado, and Colorado is one of my favorite states. I'm a big hiker / skier / mountain person. So anytime you get me out in the middle of the mountains, I am at one with nature and extremely happy. So we just went and got an Airbnb in Colorado and then hung out and just explored the beautiful state that it is up in the Rocky Mountains. So
Nice.
it was a little bit cold. It was about 20 to 30 degrees colder than Phoenix, which when you think about it isn't too bad considering that you're going from the desert to Colorado, which is,
Right.
7,000. Where we were staying was like 7,200 elevation. So, and I will tell you this though, the Airbnb that we got was, there's a main drag in this town that we were staying at, and then there's a bunch of stores, and the Airbnb that we got was on a mountain behind the stores. So we had to walk up, I would say probably the equivalent of 3 flights of stairs to get there from where we had to park the car.
And 7,200 feet, that ain't easy.
Well, when we first got there, I'm like, all right, well, it's freezing. So, because we didn't get there until like 8 or 9 at night. So, and it was probably 25 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I'm getting the stuff out of the car and running it up to the door of the Airbnb.
Mistake number 1.
Yeah. So by the time I get to the top step, I literally felt like, and I used to run marathons, I literally felt like I was 4 miles into a marathon. And then you get used to it after a couple days. It's like no big deal, but altitude is crazy what it does to your lungs.
So a couple things. Did you feel altitude sickness at all? Head spinning, stomach spinning, things like that?
No, and I've done a lot of hiking into high altitude mountain ranges, and I've not yet, fingers crossed, have not yet had experienced altitude sickness. And I have friends that have, and nasty headaches, and it's pretty bad.
Well, you have this friend who has. I went to Bolivia a few years ago, and Bolivia is kind of that 8,000 feet and up, and you can even go higher into the mountains. So when you land at the airport, they actually have like basically things on the wall. Like you used to have phones on the wall, like in airports. Now they have fucking oxygen things in the Bolivia airport, because as soon as they depressurize the plane, there's quite a few people that feel altitude sickness right away. So one of the guys from my firm who went, he all of a sudden he had to take the oxygen. Like he felt he couldn't breathe. His head was spinning. Thought he was going to throw up. That's some of the effects. For me, I just didn't feel good. Like I knew something was wrong. Like my head was spinning. It was that like very faint headache in the background. Stomach was constantly turning. So they have a lot of things that you can take. They have some medicine. Oh, there's the drink of the week showing up. I know people on podcast can't see it, but we'll get to that in a second. They have all these different medicines that have this natural cocoa element in it.
Cocoa as in cacao. So actual like chocolate prior to it becoming chocolate.
but it's like in everything. It's like in candies, tea, coffee, everything. So you're constantly having it. That helps. I was there for about 3 days. I made it about a day and a half before I was like, you know what? Let's get science back in the room. And I went to the pharmacist and got some medicine that I could take that actually quelled all the feelings. But yeah, I mean, it's horrible. It's a horrible feeling, and it's
So it
constant.
actually it went away after you took the meds?
It settles down. So I equate it to, like, I get very seasick, as you know, and when I take the medicine, I still don't feel great, but I don't feel like I got to throw up anymore.
Mm,
And that's what this medicine did. I still didn't feel great, but my head wasn't pounding and my stomach wasn't doing backflips.
yeah,
So yeah.
that's crazy. Yeah, I follow a lot of, like, hikers on YouTube. There's some really good hiking videos out there. Particularly, like, I know I'm never gonna do Everest because I don't have a death wish, but, because just too many things outside of your control can happen and you could, I mean, die. But Kilimanjaro has always been a mountain that I've wanted to climb, and I think it goes up to like 18,000 feet. Someone's gonna have to fact check me on that. But Kilimanjaro, and it's a multi-day, um, it's a multi-week hike because you have to, once you get there, you have to acclimatize, and then you have to do some, you have to go through the base, and then you go through all the different ecosystems, and then you get to the top at the end. Anyways, one of the hikers that I follow, he does these beautiful like YouTube videos. He has a drone and brings really nice camera gear and just films it, and it looks fantastic. He did Kilimanjaro, and I'm super excited to watch this episode. He didn't summit because he got altitude sickness, and this guy had done, like, dozens and dozens of mountains, and for some reason once he got into that kind of that high zone, he couldn't finish, so they had to rush him down the mountain.
So someone like yourself, being as fit as you are, watching hiking videos, that seems okay to me. Fat guy like me watching them, that just seems sad. That's like living vicariously through people who are climbing the mountains. It has a hint of sad to it.
I like the cinematography. It puts me, it's one of those things where, like, I'm on my computer and I'm working. There's no talking. There's just music and like really cool imagery. So I just put it on my monitor, and then I'll just kind of like do my work, and then every once in a while I'll look over, and it's just kind of relaxing. So it's my zen.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, Colorado trip was fantastic. We had a great time. I think we got as high as like 10,000 feet in some areas where we were, but it wasn't like, we didn't go hiking. We didn't go climb a mountain. It was too cold. Even the lake that was in front of the town that we were staying at was completely frozen over. People were like ice fishing and ice skating on it. So I did take my dogs out on the lake because I thought it would be kind of funny just to see them try and stand up. And it was actually pretty funny.
So did you used to do that when we were kids? Did you go ice skating on, I think, probably Hudson Park or wherever we used to go? Did you do that as a kid?
So, I have a really bad. It's funny you should ask, Michael, and this was not planned. You went to New Rochelle High School.
Yes.
Um, New Rochelle High School's lakes had two lakes in front of it. They would freeze over occasionally in
Hmm.
the winter. It would get cold enough, and they would freeze over. Me and my buddies would actually try and play hockey on the lakes. And one of my first times playing hockey on the lakes, I borrowed, my friend and I had same foot size, so he lent me his like old pair of ice skates. And then I decided that I was going to be goalie because I just thought I was athletic enough to be goalie, and I had watched enough hockey games to be like, oh yeah, that's easy what they do, right?
Yeah, that's
Um,
the way to train. Watch a few hockey sports.
yes. So I took a shot to the nuts so hard that it put me out for about a week to a week and a half. I didn't have a cup, wasn't wearing any other protection other than the makeshift goalie pads that they had and the goalie stick. That was it. Oh, I did have a helmet with a face mask. Other than that, I didn't have like the catcher's, chest plate that like blocks it. I took a shot right to the groin and was down for the count.
Is this the first appearance of David's nuts in these episodes?
I guess it is.
So, but like,
Look back at episode 5 called The Happy Sack Monologues if you want to hear more about Mike's nuts.
it'll be worth your while. So, like, we used to go to Hudson Park and we used to go on the ice all the time. It's funny, as a kid, I didn't think anything of it. Parents put you out there, you would skate. I wouldn't feel comfortable bringing my kids on the ice now like that.
this ice. So before we stepped out on the ice, I was watching the ice fishermen that were out there, and they bring these big gas powered
Mhm.
drills that are like, I don't know. I want to say that the spirals on the drills that drill these round holes into the ice are like probably 8 to 10 inches in diameter. So these massive, like they look like a big corkscrew, right?
Augers,
Sure, whatever you want to call it. Is that's the official
or
name?
its name. Yeah,
or,
augers.
or whatever you want to call it. Big corkscrew, that's what I call it, electric corkscrew. Anyways, they're drilling, and so I'm watching the guy, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna see how deep the blade goes, and these blades were like 5 feet
Well,
tall,
that's fair
right?
enough. You're watching the guy. You're
I'm
seeing how far
watching
he
to
had to go.
see when he's pushing down, when it gives, and he finally, it looks like he's broke the bottom.
Mhm.
If I had to guess, the ice was about 3 feet thick.
Yeah, that's all right. Like if I
Yeah,
saw somebody doing that as well, that might change my view of it. But without having watched somebody do it, like you have no idea how deep it is. And I would
yeah.
be
I
nervous
mean,
with the kids on
he
it.
was pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and the blade got like halfway in, and then it kind of broke to where you're like, all right, so that's roughly how deep the ice is. I mean, 3 feet thick, that's pretty damn thick. You're not, even if that thing cracks, it ain't going nowhere. I mean, you're fine.
I agree. So I want to talk about some questions from previous episode that came up,
Did you have
specifically
any
one
before
that's targeted. I have none. I want to know what the one that's targeted at me. Go ahead.
So what Michael is referring to is we have episode notes where we both kind of we share it and we put our own little notes on so that when we're actually doing the episode, we have a reference. So I had a member of my family ask why Michael is always so mean to me on the show.
Yeah. And so,
Michael, care to
well,
retort?
a couple things. One, I hope I got this quote right. Dan Levitard always says that ridicule is the language of love for males. So that's one thing. The
I feel
second
so
thing,
honored and loved.
yeah, the second thing is do better. I will have to be. You're bringing it on yourself.
I will tell you this. Mike and I have known each other for over 40 years, and Mike's the only friend I've ever had where I can not see you for, I mean, a year, right? And then you and I are all of a sudden in the same room, and it's almost like we never skipped a beat. Like
Right.
the conversation and how we treat each other is the same no matter how far apart we are. So I will say that most people don't understand how well we know each other and how well we like to push each other's buttons.
Well, that's the big thing. I think there are times when you and I are saying specifically something that we're pushing the buttons and we're turning the needle a little bit. We know that.
Yeah. So yeah. To the family member that asked that question, it's just it's all in good, it's all in good fun, all in good nature. Notice I never get mad at him for it. It's just, yeah, it's funny. I think it's funny. It's how we show affection.
Yeah, and to that family member, you're dead
Dickhead.
to me. So
All right.
the other thing that I thought was interesting was, so as we always use nicknames for people, right? We try not to say their names. One person, Chris, I don't mind saying his name, outed himself as the artist on YouTube.
Yeah, he
In
did.
our comment sections, he outed himself as the artist. So if I remember, I'll say Chris going forward, but that's the guy I was referring to as the artist. So he's outed himself. You know, the funny thing about that is one of my other friends said, "Look, I don't give a shit if you use my name." So I said, "All right, then I'm going to use your name." And he said, "Wait a minute, are you going to tell this story?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll probably tell that story eventually." You can't use my name. I'm like, you can't pick and choose. I'm like, I have to be able to refer to you as something for everything, whether it's good, bad,
Yeah, it's got to be
shady, whatever it
consistent.
is. Yeah. So
So, and if anyone goes back to, gosh, I think it was episode 2, we were telling a story about a friend, and Mike and I got through the entire episode. And when I was actually editing the episode, I went, you know what? If people don't understand the context of that nickname, they might get offended.
right.
So we had to actually, we talked about it, and I went back and I bleeped it out, and I think I put El Guapo as a voiceover anytime we said that nickname because I wanted to make sure that we didn't offend anybody.
Yeah, which that alone has been a big hit. That using the El Guapo to cover the person's original nickname. We've
So
since tailored his nickname to a more friendly one, so we'll just leave it at that.
have we?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. What is it?
El Guapo,
Oh, all right. So it's just El Guapo.
which just means handsome, so nobody can get upset at that.
Literally, it means the handsome.
Yeah, which is ironic considering what he looks like. I'm just kidding, just kidding.
Again, there's Mike showing love.
Yes.
So if you've ever been insulted by Michael, it just means he loves you.
Yes. Unless you're a dick, then I mean you're a dick.
All right.
So
The other question, let me
Yeah.
talk about that one real quick. So I mentioned the Macallan 40 or the Macallan 50, both of which I believe exist. And someone correctly pointed out that I mistakenly referred to it as bourbon. It is not bourbon, it is whiskey. However, for all you bourbon, whiskey, scotch, and rye snobs, they're the same fucking thing. The only difference between whiskey, bourbon, scotch, and in some cases rye is maybe a minute thing in the process of the distillation of it, but bourbon has to come from the state of Kentucky. All right.
And doesn't whiskey need to come from
whiskey is basically everything else.
Although
Scotch is specifically from Scotland. Yeah, it's from Scotland. But bourbon,
well, I wouldn't mind if you edit that out.
I will not. So bourbon, and if you actually do the research, which I did, you can find out that about 95% of all bourbons are made in Kentucky. There are actually a few companies that have said, fuck you, it's not made in Kentucky, we're still calling it bourbon, too bad, so sad. So it's I guess it's a rule, but not everybody follows it. But yeah, bourbon, whiskey, scotch for the most part are the same thing. I will tell you this, scotch tends to have a more some scotches tend to have a little bit more smoky flavor than some bourbons and whiskeys, but I am not an expert on alcohol or any of that stuff. But when it came up, I did do a little bit of research and wanted to make sure that we at least acknowledge the fact that I did call Macallan a bourbon when it's actually a whiskey, because it is not made in Kentucky.
So question, when you were saying earlier it's the same fucking thing, are you sure it said, why is Michael so mean? just out of curiosity, I just wanted to make sure.
I'm pretty sure. Right. Speaking of alcohol, let's talk
drink
about
of the week.
Favorite drink of the week, and we still don't have a theme song for that. So, but I mean, I'm crying because I was laughing so hard at that last one. All right, so I don't know what to call this because I made it up. But when I was in Colorado, we went to this little curio shop, and they had something called. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus on it.
Jackson Morgan Southern Cream Banana Pudding Cream. Oh my God.
Liqueur. So it's 30% alcohol. It's banana pudding cream liqueur, which I'm a big fan of banana. So I pretty much try anything that has banana in it.
You have to clip that to put it in the beginning of an episode.
I'm a big fan of anything that's shaped like a banana. And anyways, I like bananas. I like coconut. So any kind of alcohol that's banana flavored is right up my alley. So I mixed that with one of my favorite rums from St. Martin. See if we can get the camera to focus.
What is it, Madura?
Yes, I don't even know how to say that, but it's a rum that I bought in. This one was bought in St. Kitts, but I've also been to St. Martin, and they had the exact same rum. So it's kind of like a rum that's just available on any of the territories that are out there in the Caribbean. Yeah. So, but it is a banana liqueur, and there's actually a big freaking banana in there. It actually looks disgusting because it's like the banana's been sitting in rum for the last, I don't know.
For those who can't see it literally looks like a shit log at the bottom of his drink. So that's an image you don't want to see. I, on the other hand, once again, my water in my Boba Fett cantina, plus a beverage, Diet Coke, maybe Diet Pepsi. It's a good vintage. So, but when I do drink, I would drink something like that, like a flavored
Oh,
drink that
it's
it takes away the
amazing.
burn. That's the thing I can't, I don't
It's
appreciate.
amazing.
I just don't.
This tastes like I can't even it's not banana pudding because I think they were overselling that a little bit, but it's almost like a banana slash rice pudding type. It almost tastes like the what did I have on a few episodes? The rum chata.
Hmm.
So it's almost got a rum chata flavor to it, but it's heavily banana because there's banana in the liqueur and in the rum. But oh man, it is so good.
Great.
Yes, very very good. Anyways, that's the drink of the week.
All right. So from the drink of the week, let's go to the meal of the week, right? Last episode, we teased what is the best meal experience you ever had. You want me to go first or you want to go?
How many do you have? One or two?
I just have one.
All right, I'll go then. We'll sandwich them because I have two. So I have one that is very nostalgic, and it's
Okay.
one of the reasons why it was one of my well, I shouldn't say favorite or best, right? I should say memorable because when you posed this last week, I spent the whole week going, well, shit, like I can't think of one. And then I went back and said, well, you know what? These are the ones that come to mind. There wasn't the best food, but it was the best overall or most memorable experience.
Yeah, and
All right.
that's why I didn't say the best meal you
Yeah.
ever had, right? That's a different story, right? I just
Yeah.
meant the
So,
experience,
and
the
I
whole
don't
thing
even think I
around it.
could tell you. I've had so many good meals. I don't think I could really just point one out and say, hey, this is the best meal that I've ever had.
I bet your wife
But
star and I needed a list though. Sorry,
honey,
Reggie.
I apologize for Michael. He's an asshole sometimes.
He said I was mean. I hope
He
it
is
was you.
mean.
Was it you? If it was you, you deserved it. All right, go ahead.
Anyways, I can't remember if it was for my wife's birthday or our anniversary. I think it was close to my wife's birthday. My wife's a big fan. She's a big foodie, just like I am, but she's more into like the actual chefs and like she follows the chefs. And her dad was a chef, so or is a chef, so she's very much into that whole culture.
Okay.
And one of her favorite chefs is Scott Conant, and he's got restaurants. He has books. He's been on, you know, on the Food Network, on gosh, all the shows.
He's one of the judges on Chop once in a while, I
One of the
believe,
judges
correct?
on Chops. I think he was on Iron Chef. Anyways, super cool guy, super great chef. He's got an Italian restaurant in Phoenix called Mora Italian,
Okay.
and it's one of our favorite Italian places to go to. Anyways, I found out that he was actually going to be preparing a meal there, and there were a limited number of seats, and I think there was only like 20 or 30 seats available. And so I was able to work some connections and get us in, and it was pretty expensive too, but I was able to get us in. And he was preparing the entire, obviously he had sous chefs and stuff like that, but he put the menu together, he picked out the ingredients, and he helped prepare the meal, and he served the meal
Nice.
and came to our table and talked to us, and we were shooting the shit for a couple of minutes, and we took pictures with him. Like, it was probably one of the coolest experiences for me. And I'm not even that much of a fan, but for my wife, who's a huge fan of his, it was probably a pretty phenomenal experience. I mean, she'll have to tell you. She says she had a great time, but
Well, also like we don't we don't obviously we're not around celebrities and famous people a lot. So your only view on them is the few minutes you if you happen to stumble across them in real life, the few minutes that you're with them, and obviously what you see on TV, right? And TV
right,
sometimes will give you a skewed view,
of
but
course.
it is based on that brief experience. And so like somebody like George Foreman, who I met once in Vegas,
Did
he
he
was
have his
out with
grill?
his kids.
Is this your meal? He took out his
No,
grill and made you a
no,
hamburger.
that is not my meal. Um, though I have made plenty of meals on that in the old days, but no, that's not my meal. And like I went up to him and I said hello, and I said, "Can I get an autograph?" And he said, "Look, I'm with my kids. I don't sign when I'm with my kids, but
By the
thanks for
way,
being a
all of his
fan."
kids are named George.
Yeah, and the girl's named Georgetta, I believe. So it's George the second, George the third, George the fourth, George the fifth, and the girl's named Georgetta.
Talk
So
about a
he's like,
fucking
"Look,
egomaniac.
yeah, I know. It's great though, right?" Um, so he said, "Look, I don't take picture, I don't sign, I don't take pictures when I'm with my kids." So he's like, "But let me shake your hand. Thanks for being a fan, and I wish you the best." So again, I didn't even get what I went up to him to get, but I left with like, hey, that's a pretty good guy. Like
Mhm.
he wasn't a dick about it. It wasn't like I'm with my kids, get away from me. Like it was in hindsight, I probably as you know, we probably shouldn't have went. I shouldn't have went up to him when he was with his kids. But
Right.
you get this moment, you know, you're never going to see him again, so you take it. And I thought it was handled very well, even with, in essence, a no. And as we all know, I don't take no very well, so I think that went pretty good. All right.
Anyway, so that was one of my most memorable meal experiences, particularly because one, the food was fantastic, but two, he was just an awesome, down to earth dude and had no problems coming up to our table, chatting with us, taking pictures, just like shooting the shit for like 5-10 minutes. It was
That's
awesome.
great. That's great. So for mine, I'm going to talk about mine a little bit. So it was when I was in Australia. It was 2005, 2006, and it was a place called the Dark Side. So that's the name of the restaurant. We had heard about it, so we knew what kind of restaurant it was. My wife came with me. She wasn't my wife at the time, but my wife and I went. And so it's a restaurant, little background. It was created by a Swiss blind person. Don't know if it was a chef or not, but it was a Swiss blind person. And what he did was he wanted to create an experience, in essence, for you to understand what it's like to be blind. And so the restaurant was on the second floor of a hotel. They used one of the ballrooms. And so you go up, you check in, you can either decide, hey, I want this for my meal, or truly enjoy the experience and like, fuck it, I'll take the mystery menu, just bring out whatever you want. And so they line you up, they walk you in, you go through these couple curtains, kind of like you would a haunted house, I guess, right? You go through a couple curtains so it gets darker and darker. Now you can't see anything. And the people walking you in are wearing night vision. All the waiters are wearing night vision. And so they sit you at a table. You have no idea how many people are in there or aren't. They sit you at a table, they talk to you, they start bringing you your food. And they come over once in a while and talk you through things. Um, they'll say things like, you still have some meat left on your plate, or your drink's almost empty. Do you want any more? So it was just such a unique experience. And it was juggling both. It ended up making me have to eat with my hands, believe it or not, me, of all people, the guy who
Yeah,
goes
because
through
you want to
gloves.
know what it is you're putting in your mouth, and you
Yeah.
can't do that with a fork and a knife.
Well, I also, you can't even tell if it's on the fork, right?
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear about what I'm like and why I wear gloves, you can listen to an earlier episode. But so I had to use my hands to be able to eat. And then when at one point during the meal, another family walked in, and they were joking that they were so ugly they were only allowed to eat in dark restaurants, which I thought was actually kind of funny. Um, so we finished eating, and while I hate to admit it, the line of the night goes to my wife, who turned to me and said, "Do I have anything in my teeth?" Which I thought was hilarious because you can't see shit, right? So I hate having to say she had the line of the night. So uh, when the meal was over, they walked us out, and it was just such an amazing experience. And I don't remember what the food was like. I don't remember what it tasted like. I don't remember if I was like Daredevil all of a sudden, that all my other senses were heightened because I couldn't see. But it was an awesome experience. And
That's
so,
cool. And
yeah,
I bet
that's
you,
mine.
I mean, because they removed one of your senses, typically they say that heightens your other
Mm-hmm.
senses. So I got to imagine your sense of taste and smell were a little bit heightened in that environment. Was the food remarkably good or better or
Food was
no?
ordinary. Like I don't remember anything super special about it. I don't remember it being really good or really bad. The experience was what far and away won the day.
That's cool.
So, and if anybody's interested in going, it's closed.
Yeah, for the
Because
pandemic.
no, in general, the problem is like we went once. Like you're not really going to do that again.
Yeah, that's true.
You just fucking blindfold yourself at home if you want to experience that again. And it was
So
expensive. That's the other thing. Like because you're paying for the experience, it was, let's say, $200 meal for $75 worth of a meal type thing.
right, yeah. So we talked a little bit before about food shows and stuff like that. Have you ever played like Chopped like at home with like your kids and your wife?
We haven't played Chopped at home, unless that's some sexual thing you're trying to talk about, which I don't understand.
God, would you really want to play anything sexual
It's
with
called Chopped.
Chopped as the title? I don't think so.
No, Lorraine Bobbitt comes to
Yeah,
mind.
that's only going to end bad for you.
Yeah, for all the younger people listening to the Google her. It does not end well for her husband.
Lorena Bobbitt, yeah, and
Yeah.
John Wayne Bobbitt. Although don't Google him, you might get some a movie that he was in after the event happened. It wasn't an
Um,
adult film.
no, so we've never done like a chopped type game at home. We have done Minute to Win It. We went to my friend Secret Agent Man's house. They played it where we had four families there, actually, obviously a couple of years ago before the
It's
pandemic.
kind of fun.
Yeah, we had four families and we were going through the games, and that was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, so the if you don't know what Chopped is, the whole premise is you get a basket of like 3 or 4 items and you have to create a meal from it. And typically the items don't go together. They're typically on opposite ends of the food spectrum, and sometimes they're even disgusting, and you have to make a good meal out of it. But we've done it a couple of times, and it's actually really fun. Where like one time, my daughter had a friend over, and my son had a friend over, and they were each teams, and then we played Chopped, where they each had a basket, and I went to the store and I just picked out like not random items, but you pick out like a protein, a carb, and something that's a little bit off, and then you kind of mix, or like a vegetable or something like that, and then you say, all right, you have to make a meal out of this, and typically you do an appetizer, you do an entree, and then you do a dessert. So there's like 3 rounds of it, and it's actually fun as hell. I will tell you this though, the dessert round that I remember my son doing with his friend was it had ice cream in it, but they had put so much stuff in it by the time it was all done, it was a big gray mess. Like there were so many colors in it that they all mixed together and just it came out gray and it tasted absolutely disgusting.
You got to
But it's
nickname that the
a fun
kitchen
game,
sink. That's what you have to call that.
basically is what it was. But they were a little bit younger, didn't really know what they were doing. But it was a fun game. Anyways, I highly recommend it.
All
Back
right.
to the
And
story.
so you said you have one other place that you
I
said
do.
was a meal
Um, it's
experience.
just like I said, I was just thinking of this and I'm like, all right, well, there's two kind of meals that I remember. And the one that I remember was I was in high school and the gal that I was dating at the time, her parents took us both to this place called the Medieval Times.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, I've heard of
yeah,
it.
and I haven't seen any of these. They did have some variant of it in Arizona, but I haven't really seen these in a while. But anyways, you're basically thrown back into like if you've ever been to like a Renaissance festival, you're basically thrown back into the, medieval times and you're in a castle and there's a jousting tournament and you're a spectator and they serve you like these big like massive chicken wings where you basically it almost looks like a dinosaur leg you're like eating off of it from the Flintstones or something like that. But it was just a fun experience because it was so different. There's no utensils, like you eat with your hands and you get a big goblet filled with a drink, and it was a cool experience. That was like one of the other times where I can remember a meal being more than just a meal. It was something where I go, oh, you know what, that was kind of fun. I wouldn't mind doing that with my kids.
Yeah, and you mentioned the key word of why I've never tried it. I actually have had
Because
opportunities
you
to
eat with your
go
hands.
because you eat with your hands. I knew it in advance, and I'm like, that's a no.
You
I'm
could
like,
bring
I'm good.
gloves.
Yeah, and my understanding is you can actually ask for utensils if you wanted to, but
Mm. Anyway, that was pretty good. So
all
yeah,
right.
so that was it. So that was those were my two experiences. But I got to ask, switching the subject a little bit, have you been paying attention at all to what's been going on in the media and in the news in the last couple of weeks?
Well, I joked about the Congress thing. Obviously, that's taken over a lot of the media, but in relation to a lot of other things, I personally don't like to watch the news. I like to read the news. And the reason being, I can read a little bit. If I don't like what it is or what's happening, I can just move to the next thing.
Yeah.
While the news, it's always this person shot this person's cheating, this person did this. So,
Yeah, it's
no,
always well,
what's some
they
current,
sensationalize it, right? They pick only the ones that are gonna. They only have 30 minutes to tell you the news. They're gonna pick the stories that they
right?
think are gonna get the most views. Unfortunately, that's it's kind of what news has become in this day and age. But I don't want to get on a soapbox about that. I also only read news. I try to stay away from television stations and stuff like that. And I very specifically read news from multiple outlets. I make sure that I get my news from other countries too, like the UK, Australia,
Mhm.
the Middle East, even. I'm very interested in what other countries and how other countries perceive the United States. So so I like to get my news from various sources.
Yeah.
But one of the things that has kind of been super super top of the news, at least in certain circles, is this whole QAnon conspiracy theory stuff. I don't even know what to call it because it's I don't want to call it news because it's not, none of it's really happened, but it's stuff that could theoretically happen or is supposed to happen. And it's almost like Nostradamus, like the predictions of like the future.
So
You
is
have
this, what is it? QAnon?
QAnon.
Is
So
that the app that you watch with 8-minute increments that just went bankrupt? No, that's Quibi.
no, but there's an interesting story. So first and foremost, so I typically stay away from conspiracy theory stuff, right?
Well, it's
Because
a
by
slippery slope
definition,
too.
yeah, oh, it's a total slippery slope. And by definition, a theory is something that can neither be proven right nor proven wrong, right?
Right.
It's a theory, it's not a
Mhm.
fact. And we know it not to be false because you can't prove it wrong, but
Right.
it doesn't necessarily make it true.
Correct.
So I don't want to call it a half truth because I don't think that's doing it justice, because some theories do turn out to be facts. Einstein's theory of relativity. It's still a theory, but it's the leading theory on kind of the beginnings of the universe and all, basically all the things that kind of make us what we are, right?
Right. Unlike gravity, which isn't a theory, it's the law.
It is a law of gravity. That's right.
Fun with
So,
science.
by the way, I hear Congress is going to repeal the law of gravity. No, I'm just kidding.
All my
So,
teachers, when I dropped out of high school, would be so proud of me of making a gravity law joke.
so, um, a colleague of mine who I hold in very high regard, had kind of sent me some text messages saying like, "Hey, are you aware of what's going on? There's a bunch of things that are going to happen. I need you to take your family and stay out of major cities in the next few days." And
Is this
it's all
while you're driving to Colorado?
while I'm driving home from Colorado, right? I'm like,
Right.
I'm driving from one major city to another. Like, what is going on? So, you know me well enough to know that I just give me the facts. Don't tell me
Mhm.
what your opinion is. Let me kind of formulate my own and just give me the facts. So, so they send me a bunch of links and stuff like that. So, as soon as I get home, I'm like, all right, I got to research this shit just to make sure like what's going on. So, so I'm going to keep this as non-opinionated as possible. I'm just going to state what is, right?
Okay.
So QAnon, and this is a textbook definition that I pulled from various sources because I didn't want to be labeled, hey, the source you pulled it from is incorrect. I pulled it from various sources and they all said the same thing.
Okay.
QAnon is a conspiracy theory alleging that a cabal of Satan worshiping cannibalistic pedophiles is running a global child sex trafficking ring and plotting against the United States of America. Participants include famous Hollywood actors, high ranking government officials, Barack Obama specifically, Hillary Clinton or the Clintons, and George Soros, who's a major donor to liberal, like I wouldn't say extreme left, but leftist type party stuff. He's a big Democrat with a ton of money, and he donates a lot to it. So so immediately reading that definition, I'm like, okay, so this is kind of right wingish, right? Because they're calling out all basically left wing participants. So I'm not taking a stance on this, but when I read that, my first thought is that's fucking funny as hell, right?
So when you read it, my first thought was, how do I distance myself from David?
Right? So first of all, a cabal is like a group of like-minded individuals, typically um,
It's usually used with a negative
used
connotation.
in a negative context,
Mhm.
right? So so immediately it's kind of attacking one side. And Michael and I always try to keep this show as non-political as possible, and we're not going to change that. But when I see stuff like this, I kind of immediately get thrown on the defensive as to, okay, well, where's the proof, right? Show me the facts. I want to see the sources. So if you dig deeper into this QAnon, you realize that it's one or multiple persons posting anonymously on various internet forums under the name of Q or QAnon, or there was a bunch of different names that they had at any given point in time. By the way, this stuff has been going on for years. Some of this stuff dates back to like 2003, so it's not new. It's been kind of sitting out there on the internet and gaining momentum for quite some time now. But the only thing we know about this Q person is that they are supposedly a high-ranking official with Q level security clearance, which
What the hell does Q level security mean?
it has a specific meaning in a government context. I at this point I kind of gave up and said, all right, so the source of most of this information is someone who's basically not willing to say who they are, because and the theory being that if we knew, then they would get in trouble or potentially killed or whatever. But the problem that I have with this stuff is the I mean, this is a rabbit hole of shit because you can't prove it false, but you can't prove it true. Um, they keep saying that they're going to release all of this damning information and evidence, and this person that I've been speaking with about it has said it's a matter of hours. You know, so and so is going to come on the news and they're going to unveil everything, and then hours pass and nothing happens, and then it's like, all right, you know what, they had to cancel it because of so and so.
Bad weather.
So yeah, that is something, right? And there's always a reason why it gets canceled, and so now 3 days in a row it has gotten canceled and keeps getting canceled, right? So at this point I'm like, what the fuck, like, are you kidding me now? Like, how far are we going to go down before you kind of say, all right, it's not going to happen, it's never going to happen? Or if it is, great, I want to believe it, but I like, show me the facts. Like, I've never been a person that can just take, because so and so said it, it has to be true, and here are all of their credentials. You know, we have people questioning high level virologists in this country as to whether or not COVID is a real thing, right? So someone who spent their entire life devoted to viruses tells you one thing, and we have Facebook warriors that are saying, well, he's not true. That's not true. That's all BS, right? So, but you're going to take at face value this person who nobody knows who it is, but says that I have this information and it's going to come out and it's all going to be true. And it's just, I wonder, as a country, how do you fight something that cannot be proven true or false?
Right. And so, because of that, and because of that piece of information, and because this is a heavy or unique topic, I have a conspiracy theory that we should move on to one crazy question.
All right, we'll let that one lie.
All right. So, one crazy question, which this week's is from David. David chose it. I don't know when, but I noticed it. As David mentioned, we keep a little list, and actually, you'd be surprised. The listing that we keep to talk about the episode is pretty basic.
Yes,
We list any,
sample.
yeah, we list any questions that came up, just so that both of us know what they are. We list the carryover item from the week before. We list the one crazy question, and then we sometimes put at the bottom what's for next episode, and not much else. So there's not like there's a lot in here. But one of the things I noticed is, would you like to ask the question, or would you like me to? You
I'll
can
ask,
ask the question. Go ahead.
because you'll get to go first with the answer. I thought this was fun, and I feel confident enough in our relationship that you're not going to completely shit on me in front of all of our friends and family and listeners.
Don't
Now,
bet any money
you,
on that.
you may well be about to prove me wrong on this, so we're going to find out. The question is, what is one thing that you do not like about me?
So, a couple things. I'm upset that you're limiting it to one. That's one. Two, I think, and I told you this after I read it earlier, the mistake you made, I think, was giving me more time to think through some wise ass and some jokes and stuff. So the problem is, having to decide between one thing. I want to talk about your stupid face, your height, your Roy G. Biv that you talked about the other day, your tattoos, your stupid face, your sense of humor. There's so many things I could talk about, but no, honestly, the one thing that I don't like about you or me, as you said, is that you actually stayed in Arizona after school.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had plans to move in together, which look, it ended up working out for everybody, obviously. But the one thing is, El Guapo ended up. He knew that you were coming back. He knew that that was kind of the plan.
Mhm.
And then when he heard you weren't anymore, which I still actually, and I've never, I don't think I've ever said this to you.
Girl swooping in on another man's or another girl's guy, right?
The body wasn't cold yet. I don't think I've ever said this to you, but that actually was one of the sadder days growing up that you actually called and was like, speaking of a girl, you're like, yeah, I met somebody, I know you,
Yeah.
and I knew at the time you were dating somebody. You're like, I'm going to stay out here. So that's the one thing that I don't like about you.
No, that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
And so we've actually never talked about this. So let me come clean about that. I've always been a really shitty communicator, especially when the message is going to be received poorly or, it's not a fun conversation. So Mike and I always had a plan that when I was done with college, I was going to move back to New York and we were going to live together until we, established our lives and met people. As it just so happens, in college,
I thought it was forever. Okay.
I never thought it was forever, ever. And by the way, this is going to lead perfectly into one thing that I do not like about you, and potentially the reason why I didn't want to come back to New York. So I met my first wife, and it's just one of those things where you meet someone, you fall in love, and oh shit, all right, guess what? Things are going to change. So I don't regret that. What I do regret is not telling you in a more like I think I always kind of skirted it. I don't think I ever said like, hey Mike, I'm not moving back. I think I just said, hey Mike, guess what? I think I'm gonna get engaged. Like, it wasn't I kind of like just brushed aside the plans that we had been making since we were 5.
Well, at least the good thing is that you're still with her. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Hey, you're right. I am the mean one.
So I will fully take that one on the chin. I did not do a good job of communicating that. And yeah, so the marriage didn't last. So a couple went
there. Well, you kept me though, so that's a win-win. All right. So what is the one thing you don't like about me?
So the one thing I don't like about you actually isn't your fault, but growing up with someone and spending 40 years of your life with them, and granted, we haven't been living together for the last 20 or 30 years, but we do spend a lot of time when we are together. It's like we're together 24 hours a day, 7 days. Mm-hmm. Like when we go on vacation, we're inseparable. And even when I go and like visit you and your family, or you go and visit me, we're together all the time, right? There's no break. There's no someone's going to work, and we're together 24/7.
Yeah, and if we're going to see your family, we both go. If we're doing something with my family, we both go.
100%, right? So we maximize the quality of the time that we are together because it's so rare that we are together. And when you spend that much time with anyone, you start to remember things. And
like how much you miss them, how much you love them.
No, you start to remember what they smell like. And I think it was we went our entire childhood without knowing that you were lactose intolerant.
Correct. As Chris Rock says it best, poor people aren't allergic to milk. You got what you could, and that was it.
So I just thought you had a smelly ass. And so much so that I would, people do like a blind taste test.
Oh,
I would do a blind smell test.
you can't say a blind taste test after talking about my ass. You got to reword that. You got to think through what
I
you're going
don't
to
know what
say
to call it.
here.
But if you and I had been apart for 5 years, and all of a sudden someone were to stick me in a room that you had just left and had passed gas in it, I would 100% accuracy go, holy fuck, Mike was just here. That's
Look,
how
I don't know
distinct.
what the definition of love is, but I think that's it.
So the one thing I don't like about you, Michael Carter, is your scent that you leave behind.
So, you know what's funny about that though is when I know my farting bothers somebody, it makes me want to do it more. So, as an example, in Australia, we used to have a weekly card game. And as you know from you've had weekly card games, it's very difficult to keep those up,
Mhm.
right? Eventually they fall apart. But in Australia, we had uh, a kind of a moment of greatness where there was a lot of us who came from overseas and a lot of us who played cards, and we were able to establish a card game, weekly card game, basically for my whole 2 years that I was there. And there was one guy um, who was from the UK originally, and he hated when people would fart, like when we were playing. So what I did was one of the weeks, I actually intentionally ate about 3 or 4 cans of beans earlier in the day to
Jesus.
just blast him the whole night that he was there. And he kept going on and on about how stinky it was. He couldn't believe it. What are you doing? And then at the end, I actually told him, I'm like, I know how much it bothers you. So just so you know, I did this. I ate a couple cans of beans. He started laughing and started applauding. And he's like, I got to be honest, that's fucking brilliant. He's like, the fact that you went to such an effort to do that, he's like, that's amazing to me.
I gotta tell you right now, hearing you tell that story, I could almost smell it as if I was there.
Oh, on your
I'm,
tongue?
I'm truly grossed out right now. Truly grossed.
Oh, shit. That's great. I'm
All
happy
right,
about
tell me something funny, will you?
that. All right. Joke Vault. Once again from my intern letterhead, my internship. Parents. So this one is
Hold
in
on,
the end.
hold on. We have to remember that not everybody listens to every episode, and
Okay.
sometimes we get new listeners.
All right. Well,
Mike did an
those people
internship.
who don't listen to every episode, I'm not a fan of theirs, to be honest. All right.
Explain
Go
your
ahead.
internship, please.
All right. So when I was younger and I was about 20 to 25 ish, I had dreams and aspirations of being a stand up comedian. Problem
And
was
we,
at the time I
I've done
had yeah, the problem at the time was I had a pretty good job. It was paying well, so I never took the next step. But what I was doing in the meantime was I was actually writing down thoughts, one liners, little stories that I kept putting an envelope somewhere. In essence, quote unquote, lost them for 15, 20 years. When we were moving out of our old house, I stumbled across this and it had a bunch of stuff. And I know it's from the early 90s, but even more so to solidify it, I actually have within this package was the death notice for Kurt Cobain. So that puts it at around 94 at
yeah.
that time frame. So what we've been doing every episode, I've been digging through them, I've been pulling one out and reading them, and we're calling it the Joke Vault. So this one, I think it's actually exceptionally not hilariously funny, but funny that it actually ends in a true statement.
I'll
So
be the
bear that
judge.
in mind when I'm reading this. Parents tell you things using scare tactics. Wait 30 minutes after eating to go swimming. First of all, does anyone know of anyone who's drowned, let alone drowned after a big lunch? Or they used to say, don't play with matches, you will start a fire. Does anyone know who actually, wait a minute, that's true. I accidentally burned down 20% of my uncle's garage once. That's a true
I
story.
don't
I
think I
actually did.
remember that story.
Yeah, we're
All right.
playing with matches.
You're gonna have to tell that story in a future episode for sure. I don't think I've heard that one before.
Yeah. That's actually the whole episode. I was playing with matches. This garage caught on fire. What else do you want me to say?
All
Um,
right. So what are we doing next week?
Next week, so in episode 8, we put a challenge in there
Mhm.
that as you found out at the end of the episode, I was actually hiding hat references the whole episode because somebody specifically asked me, "Why does David wear hats every episode? Is he bald?"
And by the way, you would need to be watching this on YouTube in order to know that, obviously. So if you're
Oh,
listening
geez,
to
that's
the
like my
podcast,
old jokes that you're pointing out every time. NASCAR doesn't go left and right. If you're only listening to this on a podcast, it doesn't make sense. Oh, for fuck's sake. Um, so we're hoping to have a guest appearance on the next episode because you gave out a challenge was the person who could get the most of these hidden references we'd have on next week as a guest.
right. So we just released that episode to the public today,
Mm-hmm.
actually. So we record these a little bit before we release them. So we don't know who that person will be yet, but our hope is that we have somebody within the next 5 days before we record the next episode.
Yeah. Or maybe it'll be that girl who I tried to erase her from my existence. That would be amazing. Let her give her side of the story.
Oh man, I might actually search that one out. How fucking funny would that be? Oh, I'm not going to tell you too. It'll be we have a guest appearance and Mike doesn't know who.
That
All right,
episode will
before
be
we
a very short episode.
yeah, very short episode. Before we go, please, if you like this show slash podcast, please click the like button on YouTube, subscribe. It's the only way we know whether or not what we're doing is good and interesting and funny. Plus, it also lets the algorithms know that what we're doing is worth sharing with other people. If you are listening to us on like Apple Podcasts or Amazon or any one of the 50 other podcast platforms out there, please subscribe and like, and more importantly, review the show. If you review the show, it tells the algorithm, that we're worthy of a listen. So we appreciate it. We don't get money for this. In fact, all we do is shell out money for this because it's not free to do this, but we enjoy it so much that we don't care. So yes, please like and comment and all that other good jazz.
Yeah, that would be great. And with that, I'm Michael Carter.
And I'm David Michael.
And we are
Ridiculously
ridiculously
bored.
bored. That one wasn't that bad.
That was horrible.